On this side of eternity, my Grandpa Clark is my hero. He was a pastor in southwestern Missouri his entire life. His actions backed up his words. I was his first grandchild. When I was born, he prophesied that I would be a preacher. What I appreciate most about Grandpa is that he wasn't perfect. One of my favorite memories was of my brother Gabriel and I at 8 and 10, respectively, along with Grandma rushing to get into his 1980 Capri Classic. It was Sunday, and we were late for church. Grandpa jumps into the driver's seat, throws it in reverse, and as he hurries to back up, the driver's side mirror gets caught against the casing of the garage door and knocks it off. The first two words out of his mouth were, I'll let you finish it. My brother and I were stunned. We had never heard him say anything like that before. We were as stunned as Grandpa and Grandma were embarrassed. When we pulled into the church parking lot, he turned around to face us in the back seat, and he said, "Boys, what I did and what I said were done out of anger. I'm sorry. I'm asking your forgiveness." I had never had an adult ask me for that before. After service, I remember walking away and being so proud of my grandpa. I was thankful for the two people who came to know the Lord. But even more than that I had someone in my life who showed me what it was like to do something wrong, own it, and then ask for forgiveness. Grandpa Clark died when I was 19 years old. I had never led anyone in the salvation prayer to accept Jesus. His prophecy of my following in his footsteps hung around my neck like a dead weight. You see, I didn't want to be a preacher. I wanted to be a teacher. I felt guilty because I couldn't live up to the calling Grandpa had proclaimed over me. I was his oldest grandson. He was my hero, and I was letting him down. I started teaching 25 years ago. I love teaching theater, and now I adore teaching future theater teachers. 2 years into my first high school gig in Caldwell County, North Carolina, I met up with our children's youth pastor for lunch. I shared the weightiness and the shame of not following through on my prescriptive pastoral path. Jonathan's remarks forever marked me. He said, "Josh, you see your students every day in class. You do 8 productions a year. You rehearse with your students 4 to 5 times a week, and you go to tech days on Saturday. In youth group, I'm lucky to see them a couple of times a week, and maybe get to hang out with them, maybe, for a week during summer camp. You've got kids coming up into your light and sound room to ask for prayer. You're living the life, and your students are constantly watching. Wake up, dude. You've fulfilled your grandfather's calling." I had never had a friend share a truth that liberating before. It felt like my chains were broken. I was 43 years old and directing a show in New Braunfels, Texas, and a student who was one of the leads in our show came up to me at the end of a rehearsal. She was of German descent, a tough cookie to crack, and so honest, it hurt. She asked, "You have something I don't understand. You love us with a love that my parents have a hard time showing. You talk about Jesus all the time. You pray all the time. I don't know this Jesus. How did you come to know him?" And you know what? I forgot what I was supposed to say to lead her in the Lord's Prayer. I couldn't remember a word. I had never done it before. So you know what I did? I told her my story of how I came to faith and how my grandpa motivated me to follow Christ and how Pastor Jonathan helped me to see how my job in theater can be a holy calling. What am I getting at? These are all true stories of who I am. Allowing our salvation stories to be a part of our discourse with those in our sphere of influence, including my students, is an effective way to live out our faith. We have an incredible faculty here at North Greenville. I mean that, 100%. At the beginning of this academic year, Dr. Horn championed all of us faculty members to be Jesus, to live the life, to let our words back up our actions. Let me tell you this, his arrow hit the mark. That's what we do at NGU. That's who we are when we're at our best. Sure, in the theater department, we love exploring stories. We teach our students how to mine for the kingdom principles in the stories we choose to tell. We highlight principles of grace in the stories of our heroes. We insist on telling the truth, both the good and the challenging, when we approach the antagonistic miscreant who is bent on moral anarchy. We preach to our students not to walk into a room of actors and try to be interesting. Nah. Be interested. The smarter play is doing what Jesus did, walking into the room and being intentionally interested in everyone else around him. There are numerous ways to bridge our faith with whatever it is that we do. I've become increasingly more introverted over the years, having to be in a place with a lot of people I don't know. Honestly, it freaks me out. Maybe with the exception of watching a Cardinals baseball game in St. Louis, I don't necessarily want to go out. And when I do end up driving my wife over to Bath & Body Works for the second time in a month, thinking the entire time, why do we spend so much money here? Why didn't I buy stock in this place? I undoubtedly end up standing beside another awkward, middle-aged dude waiting on his wife to take advantage of the 20% off sale with the 15% on coupons on the hand wash and wallflowers. So what do we do while our wives walk around? We make small talk. You know the shtick, right? I say, "What's up?" And he responds, "Nothing, man." And then there's this awkward pause. And then he says, "Hey, what do you do?" What do you do? As if that answer somehow defines who I am. But the truth is, you are not what you professionally do. As a follower of Jesus, our identity is not found in a job title, career path, or even in ministry itself. I am convicted that our identity is found in Jesus Christ alone. Y'all have explored identity through a biblical lens, and today we shift our focus to vocation. Some of you may feel called to teach, to create, to build, to sing, to serve in medicine, business, or even theater. Others may feel led to be a full-time pastor because your grandpa prophesied that you'd be a preacher. But hear me clearly, your calling does not define you. What Jesus did on the cross makes you worth it, and that's enough. My hope today is to encourage you to see that God calls his kids into all kinds of work for his glory. Whether you're in a classroom, a boardroom, a hospital, or a church, your ultimate purpose remains the same: to live as his wherever he has placed you. I began with a narrative of my grandpa, and now the story comes full circle. I've been married for almost 29 years. As of June 23rd, all three of our kids have moved out of the house, and gratefully they're saved, married, and healthy. But I've got to say, empty nesting is weird. I have to learn how to woo my wife again. That's in addition to us welcoming our first grandson in this past April, our first granddaughter at the end of this month, and our third grandchild in October. To be quite frank, I am more than a little freaked out about this grandpa gig. In fact, I'm more nervous about it than auditioning for a show or selecting a cast for a production or being in front of you guys today. So I asked the Holy Spirit for wisdom to know how to deal with all this change and transition. And I go to my wife. I have found the Holy Spirit speaks through her a lot. And I tell her my doubts and my fears. How am I going to do this? And she says something profoundly wise. I don't know about the rest of you fellas in here who are married, but I married way the heck up. Gina looks at me and she says, just be Jesus, Josh. It worked for our kids. It'll work for our grandkids too. I hope to encourage you with this as I leave. Stay in the Word, live it out. Just be Jesus. And it'll work for you too. Thank you.
Josh, hey, thank you so much, Josh. I think I copied your notes. That was really, really impressive, and I'm honored to be here. My name's Eddie Taubensee, and my background a little bit, played 11 years in the big leagues as a catcher. And a lot of the guys on the baseball team may not understand. I mean, I don't think I've ever told them this, but I was a 6-time All-Star, and I won a World Series. Unfortunately, that was all Little League. So I didn't quite get that happening at the big league level. But baseball has been kind of my whole life. I started loving baseball when I was a young kid. I grew up in the 80s, and that was the time where your parents worked. I was the only child, and luckily my schools, my elementary, my middle school was really close. So I would just go to school and come home and just wait for my parents to come home from work. That's all we did. There was not much to do during the day. I just go out and play and have some fun and play. In my neighborhood, there wasn't many boys. So there's a lot of girls, so I was playing baseball with the girls. And so I started, you know what, I was a really good baseball player. I wanted to try out for baseball when I was 10 years old. But there was one girl in the neighborhood 2 blocks down. She had a changeup I couldn't hit very well, so I didn't play with her that much when it came to the baseball. But when I was 10 years old, I asked my dad, hey, Dad, I wanted to start playing baseball. And that's why I found out, I think I have a calling. I started playing baseball when I was 10, kind of already the best on the team and one of the best in the league. Got a chance when I was 15 years old to play on a senior league baseball team. We won the Senior League World Series from a team from Taiwan. So that was pretty cool. That was my World Series win. And 2 years later, I was a senior in high school. I was 16 years old as a senior, and I turned 17. I got drafted into the minor leagues at 17 years old. So I was 17 years old, never been away from home, starting my minor league career. Spent 5 years in the minors, and I made the big leagues at 22 years old. So things just seems to be going pretty good. I was in the minors for 1 year, and in my first year in the big leagues, got sent to the minors, met my wife, got married, came back to the big leagues, started to get better and better. And then my wife and I had our first fight. Things didn't go too well. And the fight was over this Christian ministry that came to Orlando. Said my wife wanted to go to it, and I did not want to go to this thing. There was this thing where the baseball players from all over come, and they have these speakers. They talk about Jesus. They talk about everything. And I said, we had a big fight about it. I said, you know what? I didn't want to argue. I said, we'll go, but I'm going to sit in that back row, and I'm just going to gut it out for 3 days, and I'm going to go back and do my own thing. But something happened that first night. There was a speaker speaking, and he just talked about how God made us in His own image. And I didn't went to chapel once in a while. I just went to bring my bat and my glove because we had to face, like John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, and all these great pitchers. So I thought I used it as a good luck charm. And sometimes the chapel is kind of a good motivational speech. But that guy said something that simple that night. He said, how God made us in His own image. And I didn't read the Bible, but I knew that was like on the first page somewhere. But then he started talking more and more. And I started realizing he was talking about how God made us in His own image, but we don't try to mold God into our own image. And that night, my heart was beating. I was like, what's going on here? And he just basically gave the gospel message that night. And I just, you know what? I gave up. I surrendered. I've been waffling the fence. I've heard about this Jesus thing, kind of like baseball. If you have baseball cards, you kind of know stats about baseball players. I kind of knew the stats about Jesus. I knew about the creation thing. I liked the Christmas thing. That was good. But I did not know Him personally. And that's what happened that night, November 9th, 1995. My life was personally transformed. And one of the first verses that stuck to me is Galatians 2:20. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life I now live by the flesh, I live in faith in the Son of God who loved me and has gave his life up for me. And that's what transformed my life. That's how I started to live. But I had a problem. I was like, now I'm going back to the big leagues, hanging with guys I used to do things with, and I'm different. I'm in love with this Jesus guy. Who is this guy? Where do I start? I didn't know what to do. So we had a chaplain on the team. I started hanging out with him for about 8 months. And our chaplain was a big 6'6", 300-pound offensive. He used to be an offensive lineman with the Cincinnati Bengals. I was like, wow, I better listen to this guy. He's big. He's bigger than me. So I'm going to listen to this guy. I hung out with him. I asked him everything. I said, what about this, and that? And how does it pertain to baseball, my marriage, life? Am I allowed to say this? Am I allowed to do this? So he was really instrumental in my walk. But also I needed to have, who's with me? You know, I'm on this team. You know, I'm good friends with everybody on the team, but not everybody's a good influence. I had to find guys to cling to kind of live life with. A lot of times you have to do that here too. And also, like an athlete, there's a lot of athletes here. We have to train our bodies all year round to endure the season. So spiritually, how do I do that? How do I endure the seasons of life? So luckily in baseball, there was 3 things. There's baseball chapel. There's the chaplain on each baseball team that spent time with us 8 months out of the year, which was awesome. And there's this ministry called Pro Athletes Outreach. It was a conference-based ministry. That's that ministry I went to. I got saved in the off-season. They bring in great guest speakers, and people just come, players, coaches, and wives come in a gathering like this, and we get poured into. And there's a going out ministry called Unlimited Potential, Inc. These are guys who are chaplains, but they take ball players, and they take us on international trips all over the world to do baseball clinics, but ultimately to share the gospel. And then that was pretty cool, and that was pretty fun. But here's the thing. I was doing that for a year or two, but I was still struggling. I was playing in the big leagues. Big leagues are awesome, making good money, lots of attention, lots of people. I was still struggling making baseball kind of an idol. Baseball is really important, but Jesus is important too, but he didn't seem to catch up. And I went to the conference again, and there was a speaker who said something very simple that changed my whole perspective. My perspective has changed. And what he said to all the athletic crowd, he said, "You're not an athlete having a Christian experience. So you're a Christian having an athletic experience." And that just kind of clicked and just made total sense. And just, fill in the blank of what you are, what you do. That could be you as also. But that's totally changed something in me playing baseball. Because what it did for me, it just freed me up just to go out and play. Not to worry about things. Man, I just get to play and have a little bit less pressure. There was still pressure, but it was just a little bit less pressure. And also, there was a lot of God moments that were happening that I was seeing. Let me tell you a few of those God moments as I was playing, as my perspective changed. One of them was, we've heard of there's a guy out there named Deion Sanders. So Deion Sanders, obviously NFL Hall of Famer, obviously head coach of the Colorado college team. But not a lot of people know he was a great baseball player. And in about 1997, he came to play with us with the Cincinnati Reds. And I played for the Reds from 1994 to the year 2000. And around 1997, we acquired Deion Sanders. And boy, Deion Sanders, what an incredible athlete. What an incredible figure. He in the clubhouse, in the private setting, quiet as a mouse. He'd sit next to me in a locker, just talk to him like I'm talking to you. Great to talk to. But I'm telling you, when he went on the field and the lights were on, it was prime time. It was amazing. I've never seen a guy run so fast and just with some great athleticism. I mean, just the things he could do. It was pretty amazing. But what was more amazing is what happened that year. Dion had a crisis of faith. There was something that happened to him. Just look at the story I just told you. He was the pinnacle of everything, but he was missing something. And that year, 1997, he transformed his life. He gave up his life to Christ. What an amazing thing. And through that, me and him had a lot of great talks early on in his faith. I was young in my faith. He was in his faith, and it was great to talk to him. But he was still Dion. He was still prime time. And it's great to see him progress all over these years, in his faith. He's still very charismatic, very total opposite of what I am. But it's great to see God use him. A lot the same way I was. He had to find somebody to hold on to teach him. He had to find who's going to walk this life with him. And also he had to find a way to do it all year round. And I got a chance to hang out with him and go out to dinners and listen and talk about great things. So it's great. And it was great with him. I even got a chance to play. I was a catcher in the big leagues, but I got a chance to play outfield with him a couple times. And he was our center fielder. I got a chance to play left field a little bit in the big leagues. And it was like the scariest time of my life because I'm big and I'm slow. And I told Dion, I said, hey, you know what? I got every ball from the end of this stage to that stage, I'll catch. But everything else, you're going to have to catch. And he said, no problem. I said, but if you catch a ball, just give it to me, I'll throw it in. He could run the ball faster, and then he could throw it in. So he didn't have a good arm. But the point is, Dion was great. That was a great God moment that I got to be a part of his life then. But also we had another guy named Sean Casey who was on my team. He was a guy that I had to cling to. I needed somebody on the team to live life with. It was hard. It's hard being on the road, all the temptations that come our way. Not easy. It's all so easy to find it, but they're coming after you all the time. But back then I had a lot of hair. I was younger. I looked a lot better than I do now. But that was way back then. But now, the point is, I needed somebody to walk life with, to hold me accountable, so we could stay strong and do the right thing. And Sean Casey was one of those guys. He was an all-star in the big leagues. He's the godfather of one of my sons, and he was a great man. But also there's great God moments where I needed God to show up in my life. And being a catcher, one of our jobs as catchers, we're supposed to be able to throw guys out as people try to steal bases. And there was a time in my career I was like, man, I was really struggling. I couldn't throw out my grandma. She tried to steal a base off me. I was struggling so bad. And, I was saying this to my wife. And I said, hon, I need a sign from God. I want a sign from God. I want to see an angel. If I see an angel, I'm going to be so confident that I'm going to be able to do anything I want. I'll be fired up to be out there. She goes, okay. You want to pray? I said, I think in the book of James said, you've got to pray. Don't doubt. Don't be like a wave of doubt, and it'll happen. I said, okay, let's do it. So I prayed that. Okay. I didn't know when this was going to happen, but the next day we're playing the New York Mets on a day game in Cincinnati, and the leadoff guy is a guy named Ricky Henderson. And Ricky Henderson is a Hall of Famer. He's an all-time stolen base leader in baseball. And at that time, he's 42 years old playing against us. And you think he's old, but he's still stealing 60 stolen bases a year. So he's the best in the league. So I'm thinking, oh, great. So about the second time up, he gets on base, and I'm my catchers here will understand. I'm calling pitches. I'm trying to call a fastball way outside, so I may have a chance. I'm peeking over there. Okay, he's not going. But then finally, I call a pitch, and as the pitcher brings his leg up, he's winding up, and I peek over, and there he goes. And I'm thinking in my mind, oh my gosh, there goes Ricky Henderson. I'm probably going to sail this one into center field. And what happened is it felt like everything went in slow motion. I caught the ball. I threw a laser down to second base, and the ball was sitting there waiting for Ricky Henderson to slide in. I threw him out, and I took off my mask. I was like, yeah. And I was pretty excited. And what do you think the first thing I was doing? I was looking around. I was like, okay, where's this angel? So I'm playing the rest of the game looking for this angel. I never saw it. I'm like, what's going on, God? I'm like, okay. So played the game. After the game, I go home, driving home with my wife. I go, honey, did you see that throw? She goes, yeah. I said, man, that was awesome. I said, even the umpire said, that was an awesome throw. And I said, yeah, I don't know what happened. I didn't know where it came from. But that was an awesome throw. And she goes, really? He said that? I said, who's the umpire? His name was Angel Hernandez. So that's a true story. That is my angel story. God does answer prayer. He didn't answer it maybe the way I wanted to, but he did answer that. And probably good that I didn't see a real angel. I probably, in the Bible, you see a real angel, you really fall to your face. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But here's the point. You know, God was doing a great work in me over time. You know, too much time and a lot of transformation in my life. God was doing a great thing, and I was putting a lot of trust in him. And he's doing a great, but here's what happened. Sometimes I'm in the cages all the time with the hitters, and some of the hitters are like, Coach, I need like 3 or 4 more. I think I found something. I think I found something. I'm locked in. This will lock me in. I said, okay, I'll give you a couple if you get locked in and you find something that makes you better. This is kind of what happened. I was already growing in my faith, doing pretty well in my walk. And then I found something that locked me in, and it hasn't changed me since. I don't know if we were doing a Bible study, we were in the book of 1 Corinthians. And this is where my purpose in life changed. In 1 Corinthians 9:19, Paul says, though I am free, I belong to no man. I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. That rocked my world. Because here, I'm a big leaguer, making millions of dollars. Everybody serves me. I don't have to take any equipment anywhere. They bring me all the food. The fans, they come to me. All the accolades come to me. And yet, this transformed everything and then the way I thought, the way I lived my life. And I do that because that's what Jesus did. He said in Mark 10:45, I did not come to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. So that put everything, I have a perspective, I have a purpose. So now baseball, my life is not about what I do. It's not about being a baseball player. It's not about, those are things I get to do, being a dad, being a coach, but it's what I get to do for God, no matter where he puts me. I played 11 years in the big leagues as a catcher. And I've also been to 10 plus countries to share the gospel through baseball all over the world. For 20 years, I worked in an organization to the MLB ball players, that conference called Pro Athletes Outreach. My wife and I ran the baseball side of that ministry for 20 years. So now I got to be a part of that to impact the Major League Baseball players. I also had lunch at the White House. And I got the bowl, I don't know if you know, I got the bowl in the secret bowling alley underneath the White House. You remember that, Chewy? We got to do that. I graduated online from Dallas Theological Seminary. I had a chance to coach in the San Francisco Giants minor league organization for a bit. I was a pastor, elder in Florida before I came here at my old church. Now I found myself in my 3rd year as a volunteer coach here at North Greenville, and I love every minute of it. And like Josh, I'm a grandpops. I have an 8-month-old granddaughter I love. And all those different places, all those different things, I have an agenda. I have an agenda here. My agenda is to serve, to be a servant to all. Why? Is to win. Not only as baseball players, we win. We want to win. We want to win on the field. But my job is to win as many as possible to Christ. And then that's why I'm here. I thank you for letting me tell my story. But the most important thing is you have a story. And you're